Hey, thank you for coming back and joining us for part 2 of segment 5 of our series, There is a Sound. Are you the sound or just noise? I am Theresa Lyons-Smith, the founder and director of LOAH-Light on a Hill and LOAH-Live. And we have been, just as I promised you, getting our socks blessed off by our special guests. For the 5th segment of this series, we are with Pastor Frederick Guions, who is the pastor of the Blessed Church here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And if you haven't already, one, shame on you. Just kidding, but shame on you. But do yourself a favor and watch part 1. And then watch them again and again and again. This is life-changing stuff here. And, you know, considering the times that we are in right now, we could use some life on a day-to-day basis, and this is the kind of stuff that just invokes and provokes you to live and live successfully, not just existing. So I want to again thank you for coming back and joining us for this part 2 of our segment. When we left off talking about change, right? Change is the sound. And so we were speaking concerning adversity. And so there is a statement that Pastor Guions made. And I want to make that statement. When God brings change, it causes adversity. That is a cause for world conversation. Because the world is experiencing some serious adversities. I think we would all agree with that. And what I would like to pose to you, Pastor Frederick, is that I think it's interesting how the answer really in some way is also the problem. Adversity is the issue, or one of the many issues we're facing, and yet embracing adversity, if is what that statement means to me, is also the answer to converting noise into sound. Can you just enlighten us some more on that?
Certainly. Well, first of all, I want to certainly thank you for just considering me to be on the show, and to be doing the second part. Just deep gratitude and humility. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
For allowing me to express myself on your show. Big fan of what you're doing as well. Getting back to talking about adversity, when God brings about change, there's some adversity, and when people think adversity, most people think of adversity from an external standpoint. My bills and getting furloughed and bankruptcies and layoffs and these things. When God is trying to transition us from good to great, or from theory to practice to mastery, there's some internal adversity that overwhelms people.
Yes.
Because people don't understand that the adversity that you experience internally is the proof that God is moving your life in a certain direction. So if I can just take for a moment and use the children of Israel, for example, they went through great internal adversity as it relates to taking a promise. Here's what God promised. Here's the promised life. I'm moving you from oppression. In other words, I'm removing the old permanently, and I'm transitioning you into something new. But it was the adversity that they faced with that transition, and it was a lot of internal adversity. Am I good enough? Can we do this? I feel outclassed. I feel small. And because they didn't know how to handle the adversity drove them back into a place in the wilderness where God did not want them to be. So when I say that when God is changing us and transitioning us, we have to know how to deal with the internal adversity For example, Moses had the same thing. Here's Moses shepherding Jethro's sheep. Young God says, okay, I'm going to reveal to you, who you really are. You are a major author. You're an all-time best-selling author. You just don't know it yet because you aren't aware of your higher self. And you're going to lead one of the greatest movements ever. So Moses had some adversity. I can't speak. They're not going to listen to me. Who should I say sent me? So he's going through a lot of emotional adversity simply because God is trying to transition him from good to great, or from mediocrity, to greatness. So those are some of the changes that if we mishandle the adversity, then they'll drive us back to places that we don't want to be, or drive us back to places that we prayed to get out of. And the reason why I say that is because the Bible says what? God told Moses that the cries of my children have reached heaven, they've reached me, right? So I was moved to take action or to answer their prayer. But while I'm in the process of answering their prayer, many of them said, hey, I want to go back to Egypt, right? So in other words, if you're not careful, the adversity that you face will cause you to go back to a place that you pray earnestly to get out of. And that's why many people are where they are, because it's just the I'm not aware of how to handle this adversity, and it's keeping me where I am, or it has caused me to go back to where I once was.
The powerful thing about that is it makes me think about, we talked about the necessity to know one's identity, the onus even that we have to ourselves, and that it just would behoove us to exist successfully, to really understand and know our identity, right? And so when I relate that to what you just shared, it makes me think of, when I think of identity and adversity, I believe that embracing the adversity that you're speaking of, one of the ways you can measure whether you are doing it in a productive way is you should find yourself looking in the mirror of you, right? That has to invoke self-reflection. That has to provoke one to really stand back and consider your position. Where am I in the adversity? Am I making sense? And so when I think about that, and I think about the process of converting the noise to sound, right? So and ensuring that we are moving forward, we are coming out of this place that is not good for us, us being the world. We are not in a good place. And in order to not become the very thing that we are supposed to be resisting, we have to be aware of adversity on every level. The adversity that's the noise, the adversity that is the sound, and again, our position in it. So where's the hiccup with that? Where's the speed bump?
I think that here's one speed bump. I don't believe that there is a lack of identity. I think that there is a rejection of identity.
Wow.
And those are two different things.
Wow. I agree.
The things, the church has to be very, very careful of what they pray for, because a lot of the things that they pray for, they're not ready for. So it's like, okay, do you really want to be intimate with your higher self? Like, do you really want to know who you are? And most people run from who God says that they are.
That's true.
So we have a whole bunch of people sitting in our churches that have resisted identity, and they're looking for something that they can be comfortable with. You know, I don't believe I can do that, but yeah over here, and God is not gonna give you another idea as it relates to yourself. So there are different reasons why we're stuck, because people know who they are. Listen, people hear God. The question is, have you accepted that, or have you laid it to the side? You know, God is always, and here's the thing about God. God is always giving us identity not based on evidence.
That's right.
But we need evidence of that. Before I accept that, and before I show myself to the great thing about Jesus was, here was a man that had a carpentry business for years. Can you imagine Jesus having a Facebook page, and he has Jesus LLC Carpentry, or Jesus Carpentry, and for years that's how people identify him, right? But then all of a sudden he has this revelation of his higher self.
Yes.
And then God tells him that, you know, you're the bread of life. You know, you're the tree. You're the gateway. And it's just like Jesus accepted that.
Yes.
And the reason why he became that is because he accepted it. Like, in other words, people are waiting for evidence to validate identity. You accept identity to bear the fruit of that identity. So Jesus, on Friday, you were a carpenter, but on Monday, your Facebook page has changed, and now you're the Messiah. So one reason why people have a hard time accepting identity is because their current market does not transition with their rebranding. So therefore, you know what? People know me. You're just the carpenter. You're just this. You're just that. But now you're professing that you're this. So most people can't handle the adversity of accepting the identity. And Jesus showed up saying, I am this. I am.
Yes.
Before he had evidence. So we talk about identity. What are we pretending not to know about ourselves? What are we pretending that God did not say?
So when you say, what are we pretending not to know about ourselves? In segment 4, I'm taking this moment to really encourage you guys to go make sure you watch the entire series. In segment 4, we sat down with 4 amazing and phenomenal gentlemen, 4 black men, and we touched on identity. And one of the statements one of the gentlemen made when I asked the question was, how do you feel about the fact that, depending on who you asked concerning the noise, they would say that you were the noise. And he started out his reply by saying, well, the truth is that at one point I was the noise. That was one of the most profound parts of that experience, sitting down with them, because at the end of the day, there must be a willingness, again, going back to self-examining and finding out what your position is, right? Because in order for this change, this transformation of getting into our rightful place to happen, it is going to take for us to be willing to admit that God has spoken, right? Life has spoken, since the world has spoken, and how have I responded?
Exactly.
How have I reacted? You know what I'm saying? So
how like the question is, and you know, those who are watching, like, you have to be brutally honest with how you respond to greatness. if you don't respond in the way that you're supposed to, then it's going to drive you back into a place you don't want to be, and into a place that God never intended for you to be. And you have to be honest about that, because we can pray and we can say things like, you know, I want to have my own business, I want to be a millionaire. But how do you really respond to that? Here's what we do in the church, right? It's not just how we respond to identity, but how do we respond to God's plan? God, give me identity. You really want identity? God, give me your plan. For I know the plans I have for you. People preach that. The whole church is going crazy. Everybody wants God's plan. Let me just share this for a minute. We've all been in church environments where somebody was healed, somebody came into real estate, somebody bought a car, whatever it was, and we've heard it said, God is not a respecter of persons. If God did it for Sister Joe, he'll do it for you. Yes. And the whole church begins to go crazy. But that's not true. Here's what I'm saying. Let's just say, and many of us know the story of Nahum. He was a commander that had leprosy that went to Elijah, and he wanted Elijah to heal him, but instead of laying hands on him or speaking over him, he told Elijah, he gave him the instruction for healing. He gave him the plan for healing. God has been good to us, but have we always executed the plan? Because he did not want to do what Elijah told him to do, and that's to go down to the brook Cherith and dip 7 times. Now listen, he had an ego problem, he had a pride problem, he was eventually talked into doing it, okay? So listen to me. So now he goes down to the Jordan and he dipped 7 times, and he went from leprosy, and the Bible says that his skin became as a baby, as a child, okay? So now he goes to church and he testifies of his healing. And now a pastor says, look at Elijah. You know, look at what God did for him, what God did for Elijah. See, if God can heal Elijah, he'll heal you. But what the pastor left out was what Elijah had to do.
Come on here.
You know, it's not about what God did, it's about what he had to do as well. So let's just say, and here's what's happening in our churches. We have people who are ignoring God's plan for healing, God's instruction for prosperity, God's instruction for success, and they're complaining about it later. Because let's just say that Elijah refused to go down to the Jordan and dip 7 times, and he still has leprosy. Most people are thinking that God isn't coming through. It's like, no, it's 2 years later and you still have leprosy, but 2 years. In other words, because you failed to execute and you didn't respond right to the instruction that would give you healing, now you're carrying something longer than you were supposed to. And what's happening in the church environment, even in humanity, is that people are still carrying things and going through things because of how they respond to God's plan. One more example I want to use, and I'll get back to you, Evangelist. Here is Peter in Luke chapter 5. And here is a man that was mending his nets, okay? Down, despondent, synonymous with quitting, right? Now, Jesus said, you know, fish aren't important to me, and I'm paraphrasing here, but fish are important to you. It's what you worked hard for. It's what you want. It's the desire of your heart. Doesn't matter to me, but it's what you want, right? So here, guys, Jesus says, all right, Peter, I'm going to team with you to help make your dream come true, right? Yeah. So he says, Peter, I'm not going to put fish in the boat for you. I'm not going to do it for you. He said to cast your net out to the other side, right? Peter's initial response was he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. Because now let's just say he chose not to do it. And now Peter goes back to his family, you know, struggling, whatever is going on in his life. And it looks like that God didn't make a way. But actually God did make a way. Peter just didn't respond to what was going to bring him his dream. So now Peter's in church, right? And Peter's blessed. and he's testifying about how Jesus blessed his business, and the pastor says this: do you see what Jesus did for Peter? God is not a respecter of persons. If God did it for Peter, he'll do it for you. But if the truth be told, that's a lie. It only happened for Peter because of what Peter did. Peter brought himself in alignment with the plan for his prosperity. If you don't bring yourself in alignment with the plan, then God's not going to do for you. So in other words, we don't know why Jesus did it for Peter, but they'll have you thinking Jesus did this for Peter and he'll do it for you too. But what they fail to say is, well, Peter, what did you do in order to get that kind of blessing? So when we look at why people are stuck, because they're resisting identity. Number one, Abram. No, I'm not Abram. I'm changing your name. No. That's not who I am. Okay, all right, fine. It's whatever you accept. The sower sowed the seed, but it's your responsibility to either reject it or receive it. Okay, so if you reject it, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so now it's the rejection of identity, who God said that I am in the world, and it's also people respond wrong to the plan for their healing or their prosperity. And that's what's happening in our churches, and it's making God look like, can you imagine Peter walking away broke? And he was with Jesus. People saw him with Jesus, and it's like, man, you came back with empty boats. You make Jesus look bad because of what you didn't do. Jesus had the fish ready. He had the healing ready. He had the millions ready, but it's because you failed to respond to his plan that makes him look bad. So two things: it's the rejection of identity, and it's not responding to the plan. And that is the reason why God is a good God. It's like Nahum, listen, I know it's 7 years later and you still have leprosy, but God was good to you. He made a way. You don't have to live with leprosy. You're living with leprosy because of your failure to respond to his plan. Because God's going to always tell you to do something that you don't want to do, but we fight the plan. And it's the very plan that God has to expand us.
Yes. Wow. So, action, response, and action.
Yes.
Right? And we had the opportunity to talk and share some things in conversation, and one of the things we were sharing was the difference between response and reaction, right? And so again, this whole series, there is a sound. Are you the sound or the noise? A great deal of the noise has been not a result of response, but a result of reaction. Yes. And I will go so far as to say that because we resisted, now I'm not blaming us for the injustices and the noise that has involuntarily bombarded and affected us, right? But I'm talking to us in this moment to say that we have a place of accountability here, and that everything that's happening, Pastor, is not the result of what somebody else is doing to us.
Exactly.
Some of what's happening and some of why what somebody else keeps choosing to do is actually a result of the position, I believe, that we keep putting ourselves in by ignoring instructions. And so what it does is it leaves us unarmed. And then we keep making the mistake. I'm talking about this vicious cycle that in my 51 years, 51 years.
Look, 41. Sorry.
Praise God. But in my 51 years, it's been a contribution to this vicious cycle of they do, we react because we resist. But the question that I think and the focus that we need to bring it into is the resistance that's killing us. What they're doing to us, and this might sound like a real contradiction, what I'm getting ready to say, because of the numbers of actual deaths that have been at the hand of the noise, the racial and systemic injustices, the brutal disregard for humankind in the form of the black person, the African American person. But just for a moment, I want to talk about this effective change, because that's what this series is about. It's about identifying the noise and making a converting the noise to sound, the effective sound. We talked about how sound is aware of the space and the need of the space that it has to fill. So we want to convert this noise to sound, but I am a firm believer that it is going to take a willingness to block out that noise. Concentrate on the internal noise.
Yes.
Start there.
Yes.
And in order to do that, we have to be willing to one, embrace our identity. But in order to own and embrace your identity, you got to find out what it is. And this might be a little tough for some of us, but in order to find out who you are, you must be willing to surrender who you're not. And how that relates to that noise is we have to stop reacting to the lie of what we're not. Yield to instruction by what God has given us. Now, we understand that not everybody that is listening to this series and these segments is a believer, is a Christian. But one thing for certain and two for sure, you may not call it God. Okay, but there is something greater that we call God. I'm a Christian, so I can't even pretend to call it or something else. Whatever you choose to call it, there is something greater beyond us that's moving, and that is trying to deliver us to another place that the noise is dissipating. Some of the noise is really the control that we have given to somebody and some things who don't even have they are not even qualified to define us. But we've gotten caught up in the noise. And getting caught up in the noise will most certainly cause you to lose sight of who you are. And I'm saying to every single person who will be under the sound of my voice, it is imperative, crucial to your life that you go back to the mirror and identify yourself in this place called life, so that you can become a contribution to the conversion of noise to sound with a response and not a reaction. Because when it comes to the reaction, Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? How's that working for you?
I'm sorry, but that was good.
Right? Because how is that working? It's not working. Here's the truth, and we're going to close out by letting Pastor Guions give us some final goodness.
Yeah.
Because you might not agree or even fully understand everything that's being said. So I'm charging you to put it in your hearing, put it in your hearing, put it in your hearing, and then let it settle. And search out some things for yourself. And then you will find out that what we are saying and sharing with you is truth. So we're going to let him have some final words of goodness to share with us. But I want to say to each and every person, each and every human, specifically and in particular, because of the adversity and because of the noise that we're facing, to every Black person or African American person, whatever you choose to be called. But I'm talking to all human mankind. So whether you are a Christian, whether you're a believer, whether you're not, whether you're Black, whether you're white, whether you're not, this is the point in existence where we intentionally and willingly put ourselves in a position to stop reacting, because the danger of that has become, we are so close to becoming the very thing that we want to resist. But we got to grow up. We have to grow up. We have to, you too, we have to grow up and be willing to say first to ourselves, I have not been walking and living in my true identity. Because if I was, I would understand, one, I don't need permission to matter. I don't need permission to be kind, to be intelligent, to be phenomenal, to be great, to be a life changer, to be a positive contribution to mankind. If you are true to your identity, you would realize you don't need somebody's permission to be that. And when you understand that, you become a responder and not a reactor. Reaction is looking for a like reaction, but a response understands that it doesn't matter whether you react or not. This is the contribution to what is needed. How would you close us out? This is our final segment to this series. Are you the sound or just noise? Because there is a sound.
I like Evangelist, what you said, and what are you choosing to ignore? Because she asked a great question, quoted Dr. Phil. It was a great question. How is it working for you? How is it? Only listen, now is not the time, and we're talking to humanity, not just people of God. It's like, how is what you're doing working for you? Because insanity is to continue to do the same things over and over again and expect different results. But let me just say this last thing. Greatness has a beginning. Greatness has a genesis. You know, people say, oh, look at that company. That company is great. That company started 18 years ago. Okay, so greatness started 18 years ago. I want to highlight the greatness of David that most people never talk about, and it goes back to what Evangelist said. Just because you're anointed does not mean you're going to be successful. Everybody wants to be anointed, but it doesn't guarantee success, okay? Evangelist Theresa talked about embracing who you are despite what other people may think you are. And here's the greatness of David. And you have to understand who he was when he made this decision. David was living in a household of people he loved and respected. And I'm sure he valued his father's opinion. And I'm sure he valued his brother's opinion. But here was a young man that nobody thought he can be king. Nobody saw him as being great. They all had their opinions of David, and that could have affected him. But David heard the sound of tomorrow. He heard the sound of destiny. Despite how it came, he heard the sound. And here's what made David great that most people never talk about. He could have easily resisted the sound. He could have said, that sound does not sound good to my ears. I'm going to change the station. But David responded to the sound despite what other people thought about him. And that was the beginning of David. So going back to what you're saying is, if you are going to be great in this world, because we only have one life to live, you only do it once, you have to make a decision. And I believe you said that for a reason. You have to make a decision to accept who you are, to accept the sound that you've been hearing about yourself, despite what other people say about it, or despite if they agree with it or not. Because most people are not going to agree. But if you are going to be great in this world and fulfill destiny in this world, you have to make a decision to accept the identity and to accept the sound of who you are, and then show up that way moving forward.
Show up. Yeah. Wow. 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 Okay, I'm just going to say it one more time. Wow. I can only hope that, again, you will just make it a point to listen to this series in its entirety and let it invoke you and charge you to become an action in this metamorphosis, in this transformation that we are charged to make. Because at the end of the day, our very lives depend on it.
Wow.
Our very lives depend on it. So I am going to close with the question we started with. There is a sound. Are you the sound or just noise? I want to thank Pastor Guions for just endless life information, life wisdom in segment 5, part 1 and part 2. Please stay tuned and look forward. He will be joining us again for another project that we will be doing. And stay tuned and stay connected. Get connected if you are not. Again, he is the pastor of the Blessed Church here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You want to give the address, Pastor?
3751 Allen Avenue, Suite 300, right here at the corner of Allen and Bartram Avenue. Certainly right now, because of COVID and because of the times that we're in, you can't gather, but you can gather virtually.
Yes.
We come on and we stream live on Facebook from my page, Frederick Guions, every Saturday at 10 a.m. and every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m.
Yes. Do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor. I know some of y'all like to sleep late on Saturday over that 10 o'clock bacon and eggs. Get a good life catapulting word. God, he has a gift of speaking to everybody. Church or not, tune in. Tune in and let your life be enlarged and enhanced. I am Theresa Lyons-Smith, the founder and director of LOAH-Light on a Hill and LOAH Live. You can contact us via email at onelightonahill@gmail.com. You can reach us by phone at 484-463-7178. If you feel like there is something that we can do to uplift, to edify, to encourage, to ignite, to empower you, do not hesitate to reach out, because that is what we are about. And so reach out, and stay tuned. There is so much more coming, And I can't leave without saying, I am also a member of Effectual Praise and Worship Center, and you can find us. You can get blessed on Saturday and Sunday, back to back. See how that go? You can join us live as well on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock on Facebook. You can go right to Effectual Praise page. It'll come up. We are located in Pensacola, New Jersey, but again, due to COVID, you can still get your socks blessed off virtually, and you can join us on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. for prayer and Bible study as well. All I'm saying is, I don't care how you get it and by what means you have to get it. Get life, abundant, successful life, because it is out there. Purpose is not just what you have. It's not just what you do. It is literally who you are. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned. There's so much more coming your way. Thank you.